Hello, family members. I hope you're having a nice day today. I'd like to talk to you today about movement, about something that we take for granted a lot of times, about the ability to go from one place to another, just a simple thing. We forget that it wasn't that long ago, a couple hundred years, that was extremely difficult for people to go more than a couple dozen miles away from their home, if that it was pretty common for people to almost never leave their home, the immediate area where they spent their daily lives. And yet we have people today that commute an hour and a half away, meaning that they drive an hour and a half away and then come back an hour and a half later in the evening and longer. It's amazing how much more freedom of movement we as a species have. But it's also extremely frustrating how limited that can be. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. I made a video around the time of the election, so about a little more than a year ago, called I Dream of a Fully Funded Society or something like that. And this is kind of along those same lines. I think that it's very easy for us to get so wrapped up in things not getting incrementally worse that we think of things as staying the same or maybe only getting incrementally better. And we don't take the time to fully think through the possibilities. What we should be asking for from our society, not just what we might practically have some chance of seeing happen. This is stars in the eyes. This is maybe someday we will have that Star Trek future. And this is one of the things that I think would help us get there. I, in the last year, officially gave up on having a driver's license. It became increasingly more physically difficult for me to drive. It became increasingly more difficult for me to leave the house at all. And so I just really often don't. I mean, except when I have to go to a doctor's office. So I have become acutely aware of how hard it is sometimes to get things done when you don't have that freedom of movement, when you can't just hop in the car and do whatever, you know? Of course, it makes everything more expensive. Now, of course, maintaining a car isn't cheap. There is some expense in maintaining a license and insurance and all of the things that you need to actually have the car to be able to hop in and jump and da-da-da-da. But a lot of the way that I get through the day is I have to use delivery services. And almost all of those delivery services have either higher prices on the products that they sell compared to things I could easily get in store when I could just drive to the corner store. Or they have pretty expensive delivery fees, tips, service charges, whatever. So, and mostly both, most of the time both, yes. I mean, sometimes you don't get the higher prices, but you always get the fees. You know, there's very little I can get as far as the things I need for my daily living that I don't have to pay some sort of surcharge for because I'm unable to go get it myself. And if it was just an issue of me driving and I could, say, use public transit, that's not available to me here. I mean, that's something that exists some places in the United States where I live, but not in Florida. I mean, there's a little bit of public transportation here and there, but there's nothing reliable. And you know, affordable and that most people are going to be able to use in their daily lives. And if you don't use something in your daily life, you're not going to use it on the odd circumstance where it might have been useful to you, as something to get you to the bar so you can party with your friends and don't have to worry about a designated driver or getting an Uber or whatever. You can't just hop the train or a bus or something and go do that around here. And it sure would be nice if that was an option, right? But it's not. I wish people had the ability to just step outside their door and be connected in some way with a public transit system that had, different types of modalities that work together, trams and streetcars, maybe subways and trains, buses, shuttles, people movers, any number of things. There's so many different ways that people can be moved in a cost-efficient way and a comfortable way and a way that they can incorporate into their daily lives. I wish that everybody in the entire world had just steps that they had to take from their front door to some sort of system that once they're in the system, they can get where they need to go and they don't have to worry about there not being ways to connect from here to there, because you might be able to get a Greyhound bus to Clarksburg, but then once you get there, how are you going to get the rest of the way to Buchanan? If, say I was trying to take a Greyhound bus to my parents' home in rural West Virginia, how would I do that? I could fly to the nearest city. Yeah, sure. But then what? Do you think there are many people sitting around ready to take Ubers where they're driving people from like 3 counties away from one rural place to another rural place? It's not a good system. It's not reliable. It doesn't work. And so that means that there are people who are unable to get where they need to or want to go. They don't have freedom of movement. And that doesn't even start getting into things like people who have various disabilities. And, if we had a system like that, you wouldn't have to worry about, oh no, how am I going to get around because I have a limb difference, or, I have night blindness, or any number of different types of disabilities that can make, epilepsy, narcolepsy, things that are like that are, you still have the ability to kind of function and have a life a lot of the time, but, it wouldn't be safe for you to drive. But when I think about freedom of movement, I don't just think about people having the ability to get from their home to work or recreation or friends or family houses or vacation or whatever. I'm not just thinking about that kind of freedom of movement. I'm thinking about much grander than that. A hot topic today in the United States is immigration, right? Right? And immigration is something that has a lot to do with freedom of movement, right? There's the obvious level, the obvious level of people being able to immigrate to wherever it is they believe that they're going to have the best opportunities to make the most of their life for whatever reason. But there's the deeper issue. A lot of times people may not be quite refugees, but they may be moving, trying to immigrate for reasons that are extreme economic stress, social stress, lack of educational opportunities. There can be all sorts of reasons why. someone want to move from one place to another that aren't related to a desire for them to leave where they are to go somewhere else, but because they know that what they have where they are is so, insufficient, that whatever costs there are to leaving home and going somewhere else, it's worth it to them. It'd be lovely if all people that were immigrants were immigrating from one place to another because they had a strong desire to go to that place. But we know a lot of the times when people are immigrating from one place to another, it's because they need to leave where they were to get somewhere better. I sure did that. I mean, it wasn't from one country to another, but it was from West Virginia to Florida. My prospects for so many different aspects of my life, you know, just the ability to be able to connect with a community, being a kind of a weird queer girl growing up in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia, sure was nice to be able to come down here in a place where there's like actual queer communities. There's the Jacksonville drag scene, Tampa drag scene, the Orlando drag scene, you have Fort Lauderdale, Key West, and then you have all of the like little queer communities and nooks and crannies and pockets and things that aren't necessarily drag related, but are still freaking awesome. I have access to that. I'm an unrepentant Disney adult, so I got to have my annual pass back when I was well enough to do that. I had so many opportunities because I left West Virginia and came here, because I had the ability to make that choice and to move from a place that's economically distressed, more or less a third world country, which I hate to say that about West Virginia, but it is. There's third world countries that are in better shape, a lot better shape than West Virginia. West Virginia is, there's no future there. Nobody with any sort of power or influence cares at all about the future of West Virginia, or making it better for the people that live there, or making it so that people don't have to move away. Like, almost everybody in my generation has either moved away or OD'd. I mean, that's the stark reality of it. And I was able to leave a place that was that distressed, that had so little for me to latch on to and be able to build a life around. And I was able to come to somewhere, a richer state, where there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more opportunities. The healthcare is a lot better. When I had cancer, I was able to basically get cured within 6 months. I had one of my best friends, her mother around the same time had lung cancer. And it took almost as long for her to start getting treated as it took for me to get cured. And she died. And I'm so happy. I had the ability to leave that place, which a lot of people from third world countries don't have the same opportunity. They can't just hop on an interstate and drive to another place and start over again. Like, Americans do not understand how lucky we are that if we are in a place like where I was, we can get out. But I shouldn't have had to do that. I shouldn't have had to leave. I wanted to have a life in West Virginia. I had a community of sorts here and there, you know. Believe it or not, there's punk and metal scene of sorts in West Virginia, and drag and all of the things that are everywhere else. They're just kind of hidden away in smaller scale, and so fun and authentic and raw, and I just love it so much more than I ever loved any of the polished big city stuff that I would see whenever like my grandma or my mom would take me up to Pittsburgh so that we could see the Broadway shows that were on tour, you know. I love, I love West Virginia. It's in my bones. But I didn't have the freedom to stay there. I didn't have the freedom not to move. And because I was in a third world country state instead of a third world country, then the pressure for me to move, how could I resist it? That's why my state is being drained dry. All the people with any sort of promise or talent, get the hell out. Look at Jennifer Gardner. She's from West Virginia. Have you ever hear her talk about West Virginia or have any connection to that? No. She left and she didn't look back, I don't think, at all. I've never gotten the impression that that's been a priority for her. Or even, say, smaller scale, like Weijia Yang from the White House Press Corps. She works for CBS News. She's from the same hometown as me. She got the hell out. That's the only way she could have ever done anything to the level where she is. She could have never done anything like that in West Virginia. She had to leave. She didn't have freedom not to move. I want people to be able to go where they want to go, stay where they want to stay, build their communities wherever they see fit. I'm sorry, that's not the world we live in right now, and that's really annoying. I think people from my generation tend to forget that when cars were first invented, it was really common for people to just like stand by the side of the road and hatch a ride with whoever came by first. You know, you gave people rides, people gave you rides. That's just kind of how people got around. But then, you know, you get the local TV news and they like to make a big deal about things like hitchhikers and stuff, which, you know, when people hitchhiked all the time, I wonder what the percentage was then. It's probably pretty low, the amount of times that somebody was hitchhiking and had a bad experience versus a good one, when it's a daily occurrence that everyone's doing all the time without a thought. And then as it became more and more rare, then the, you know, percentage of times that something bad could happen, yeah, that's going to go up. But that doesn't mean that that wasn't necessarily a reasonably decent system, at least for that time frame that it was pretty prevalent, you know. That probably isn't the best solution for us these days. But, you know, if people still want to have a car, fine. Have a car that you drive and then it locks its little legs into some sort of like train track, and then the train track takes you to wherever the heck you want to go. And so that way you don't have to sit in the same space as other people. You don't have to actually be with the public on public transit. But you're not the one who's driving. You're not the one who has to keep, you know, focused all the time. Like, humans are pretty decent drivers. You know, the whole self-driving car thing has led to this hype saying, like, it's not the case. Humans aren't bad. But we're still, you know, not perfect. Sure would be nice if we could take even more of the risk out of that. I agree, Osprey. Osprey had to come in the room just to tell us this right now. Come here, you little brat. You little brat. This is what happened. She is so mad at me right now, you guys. Oh, I'm sorry, Princess. Cats just can't be placed. I hope you know that. And of course, my dog's right down here. If you see me petting things, that's... Anyway, not to mention traveling with pets. You know, sure would be nice if there was an easy way to do that. That would make it a lot easier to be able to see family or do things that are just somewhere else. Go. Tourist dollars are really great for little, niche communities. Like, there are places that exist in West Virginia that are nice. And the reason they are nice is because they're near enough to things like, say, Snowshoe, the ski resort, that they get some tourists. And those tourist dollars are like gold because they're people who are bringing money into the economy. That doesn't happen in West Virginia. Everything just flows out. You go to the store, it goes to Walmart, or even if it is a local shop, their supplier, the money just flows right out of the state and nothing ever comes back in, except for those little trickles of maybe a little bit of tourist money here and there, a little bit of tokens of nothing for raping our land and destroying our mountains and muddying and acidifying our creeks and all the terrible things that industry does to that state. Not that industry doesn't do terrible things to all the states, let's be honest. It's not just the rural, underserved ones. I mean, industry's not exactly great down here either, but money comes in and stays in. It doesn't all go out. You know? And a lot of the reason why West Virginia and other rural places have that stagnation is another freedom of movement issue. If you look on, say, interstate maps and whatnot, you'll see that there are certain places where there are just huge gaps. There's no roads going through. And those places are almost universally economically depressed. If you can't get products to or from a location, if you can't get, potential employees to and from a location, you're not doing business there. A lot of people who live on the east or west coast will callously regard, the Midwest and such as the flyover states. And that's so gross because we are all equals, right? That's supposed to be how America works. We're working for equality and equity and all these great things. Except fuck the rural people? Really? Is that the way you want to approach that? Because that seems a little strange to me. I'm just going to say. And it would never work to have freedom of movement through places like Kansas or eastern Colorado or West Virginia without something more than just cars and interstates and stuff. When you're talking about big swaths of vast open plains, tell me we don't need bullet trains there. When you're talking about West Virginia, I mean, I don't even know, I think we need to be looking at gondolas and stuff like that, work with the terrain. And if you make a public transit system that works with the terrain and people are able to actually get to and from those rural places, they're a lot more attractive places to live. And if people start moving in there instead of all just leaving, then the communities can grow and sustain themselves. But they're dying off. And the ability to leave as well as we can is both a blessing and a curse. I wish I could just get in a little pod or just take my little rollator and roll down to the bus stop or whatever and go to the library. Or just go, there's a cute little nursery that has fresh squeezed orange juice and, locally grown oranges and plants, and they have business cats that you get to pet the cats while you're there, and it's great. And it's really close to where I live. And there's no way for me to get there unless I have somebody available to take me. And that's not always that easy. Everyone's always busy, right? And that's not the sort of thing you would do. Take an Uber to do that. That doesn't make any sense. Just a little casual trip like that. Or, oh my gosh, there's a Jeremiah's Italian ice stand. That is, like, if I could ride a bicycle, probably within a reasonable biking distance. It is not that far, and I cannot get there. And that's not the sort of thing that you can have delivered. The delivery fee would be more than the cost of the product, probably. And it would be like a horrible waste of resources. And when you're disabled and you don't have an income, you can't waste resources like that, Little simple things like that. I wish I could I'm so close. I wish I had the ability to access that. If we had shuttles or buses or trolley cars or something. But it's so far away from a reality in the real urban centers. Places like this, the suburban centers, that's such a far away pipe dream that it's almost like incredible to try to even think about. I wish. I had a friend tell me earlier today, that her brother-in-law died suddenly. And it was right before Thanksgiving. And he lived several states away. And the first thing that she had to think about was how they were going to pay to get there. They didn't have the money. They did have the money to get a hotel room and to pay for gas and all of the things that they needed to pay for to be able to get there. But that was going to take up all of their bill money. And then there's nothing left for a car payment. Not what she's going to do. That's not uncommon, right? In a moment of unimaginable grief out of nowhere, first thing that people have to think about sometimes is just how they're going to get to be there to share the grief with their loved ones. Or if somebody gets sick or injured, how are they going to be there to be with them in the hospital or as they're recovering? I feel like people shouldn't have to worry about that. I feel like people shouldn't have to worry about how they're going to get to their job or how they're going to get their kids to their doctor's appointments or to school or to the local library, the beach, wherever they want to go, Splash pad, that's Florida stuff. I dream of a world where people could use the resources that are available without a second thought, because they know that they can get to where they need to go when they need to go there. They can reliably depend on sources outside of hopping in a car and trying to drive on an interstate through who knows what sort of conditions and paying for gas and snacks and whatever else along the way, tolls. For a free country, we sure aren't very free. What do we pay our tax money for? Do we pay it so that we can have a military base in Germany? That we can maintain Guantanamo Bay? So that we can have like 5 different branches of the military? But our own citizens don't have the ability to move from one place to another? It used to be common for there to be streetcars and trolleys and easy freedom of movement. People used to be able to just get on a train pretty much in any rural town, city, village, and take it to the next biggest hub and to the next biggest hub until they got wherever the heck they wanted. Can you imagine? Americans cannot imagine that kind of transportation being available. I mean, a lot of the time, the problem is you can get transportation to the area, but once you get there, there's not going to be local transportation. What are you going to do? Rent a car? That's not always easy. And if you're under 25, it's practically impossible. But we're so free, aren't we? I dream of freedom of movement, and I think that we have a right to demand it. So, that's what this was all about. All right, family members. Kimmy is saying I need to stop talking and start petting, so I better get to it. Love ya. Bye.